Hi, this is a pleasure for me to welcome you to my channel. YouTube channel. Uh, for those who are the first time watching me on YouTube, I usually do this show uh, for almost a year in French. So I decided to do both English and French. And today I would like to talk to you guys about the origin of drums. Because I have the actual version in French available, but I talked to some of my friends who work with me here in the U.S. and they said, well, it's very interesting the way I was explained to them actually uh, the origin of drums. Um, and also, it happened that most of them they are ATs. ATs means the art therapist. Art therapist, for those who don't know, it depends on the field, but in the psych field where I work personally, uh, those are folks who have degrees in that. They do music, they do a lot of stuff. They learn a lot about in that particular arena of music. So they know how to play guitars, they know how to play drums and all that. They have actually access to those instruments for one reason, because the ATs, the art therapist, uh, so being art therapist, their main role is to help people who are going through some mental challenges, some behavioral issues, such as people who are really struggling in getting rid of alcohol addictions or drug addictions, all kind of disease which can cause any mental dysfunctional. Uh, what I mean by that is that when you're alcoholic or when you are a drug addict, that may lead to damage your brain and unfortunately create what we call in a psych word create finally a chemical imbalance on your brain. So that induction would create that kind of imbalance. So I'm not coming here to talk about those particular issues, which I'm not a psychiatrist, even though I work in a psych ward. But what I'm going to talk to you today is the instruments, musical instruments, actually the art therapists are using to as a group, as a coping skill or coping mechanisms, which gonna help these folks who have some issues, personal issues, which unfortunately impact their mental uh, status. So I will not talk about a guitar, even though I play myself guitar, but I'm going to talk mainly on what we call the drums. Now, as you see, the word drums with the nest means we got different type of drums. But a lot of people I came across and I talked to a lot of folks about drums and asked them a few questions. Do you guys know exactly what the origin of drum is? Well, a lot of people said, well, you know what? Some of these drums we're using here are either coming from Europe or some are made locally here in the US, but we make them synthetically. So it means all of these drums, to be honest, 95% of them are made with synthetic material. It's not the real material, which of course I'm going to explain to you as an African and also having that heritage of the traditional knowledge and wisdom from Africa. Well, the reason why I really wanted to emphasize on the origin of drums, because this is very important for everybody. It doesn't matter which part of the world you're from. It might be yellow, maybe Asian or Caucasian or African American. You need to know what the origin of a drum. Now, I'm just going to roughly, give you very maybe not into too much details, but I'm going to just give you the great ideas where the drums are coming from. Yes, we all see drums, people playing instruments in most of bands. People have bands, orchestras, or opera. They're using there is always a drum right there. Uh, so, where is this coming from? The drum were not born in Europe. The drum was not born in America. I can guarantee you that. If you check the history, if you go through the do some research on the history of Egypt, and you will find some traces. You will find deep stories about the usage of drums and the origin means. When I talk about the origin means how those drums are made out of. What are the raw materials we can make drums? Well, for your information, drums have been used for hundreds of thousands of years. You may be surprised. The drums came in Europe and America, or most of all these Western countries, very recently. Recently means for most of them, when they came to Africa, I'm talking about the Portuguese, in the beginning of the 5th century. I'm talking about 1487, 1495, all the way up to the 1600s and 1700s. So, like I said, from the 5th century to up to the 19th century, that's how a lot of Europeans or a lot of Westerns, including Americans, came across for the first time and saw those drums. So, let me shortly tell you how this came about. I mean, the origin of the drum. Yes, drums are coming from Africa, and how? Well, mainly I'm going to tell you the materials we're using, what the raw materials. All these drums, as you see, you can see the form of it. It depends. Like where I'm from, that region of the Congo, Gabon, Cameroon, what we call the Bantu people. We, the Bantu people, including the people from South Africa, even up to the north, mainly from Egypt, the south part of Egypt by the end of the Nile, Sudan, Cameroon, Chad, Gabon, the Congo, all these areas, they were using drums. A lot of people were initiated. Initiated means that they have a specific training, spiritual training, through which they have to encounter some spirits. By what I mean by encountering is that they have to go through secret initiations, secret societies, where they have to get special, mystical, spiritual training. And after that, they were also trained how to use those drums. That was the second step. But the first step is they were trained also how to make those drums. So those drums were made out of two elements. First of all, from the trees, and not any kind of trees. We have specific trees. I will not give you these because Africa, as you know, it's over 25,000 different dialects and languages, idiomas. So it's going to be very hard. Like where I'm from, among the hundreds of dialects or languages groups, like we have 45 or 50 groups in my country alone. I wouldn't talk about Nigeria. They have over 10,000. We have different names after those drums. For your information, the word drums, we did not know it until the 20th century. Originally, we used to call it tom-tom. Tom-tom was the original name of those drums of you guys you're playing. And in French, would say le tam-tam. In my local language, where I'm from, we call it ngoma. Well, you see what I'm saying? So ngoma, that's my tribe. And other tribes in my country or dialects would call it a different way. So ngoma, or the tom-tom or the drum, we have different types. Like there are some ceremonies, I'm going to allow you to listen here. Those ceremonies will allow the people attending those ceremonies, most of them, they are initiated to our secret traditional rites. So in order for them to get in connection with the invisible spirits, with our ancestors, they have to go through some musical rhythm. Uh, we use the tom-tom, and the tom-tom or the drum is one of the main element they would use through some messages they will send out by while the, the drum player will also, the way he's playing the drum, he will follow the message. He will also follow or send a message. Originally, when the Europeans or the colonists came to Africa, the drums were used, like I said, originally made out of some certain type of trees. They cut them into pieces, make it rounded, and after that, there is another step which consists of using the skins. Back in the day, until I know till now, there are some type of animals. Of course, do not shout at me, please, because in America, you cannot kill animals to do that. But at the same time, remember, in some states, such as Louisiana, you guys are using the alligator skin for making shoes. So I think if you do that, well, we as well in Africa, we use some animal skins, I apologize. We use some animal skins to make those drums. It's not any type of animals. You would have been taking the skin of a gorilla. We wouldn't use that. We use the skins of the cousin of what you call here the deer, like the antelope. The antelope skin is used. All the kind of animal skins used. So we choose a stronger one. It depends. Like if you want to have the bigger drum will use a very strong skin of a certain animal. And the little one, we will use then a softer, a little skin of a certain animal. So that's how those drums are made out of. Trees, specific trees. Also skins, specific skins from specific animals. And within the knowledge of we have and the wisdom, of course, those guys are they are initiated into the deep knowledge of our jungle, so they know what they're using, they know what they're doing. There is a rite or a ritual, specific ritual before you even cut that tree, to cut it off, to cut down the tree and then take it, cut into some different pieces, make it a hole in the middle in a very artistic way. And then the next step, you have to also use the first specific techniques to go and search for the designated animal, from which, of course, they're going to eat the meat, but the skin will be carefully taken away, taken off the body and dried. Keep it dry for a certain period of time. The ashes of the fire, I'm talking about the dead trees, we're going to make it dry, and then also expose it to the sun for a certain number of days, even months. So after that, the skin will be ready to be used and make the composition of that drum on the bottom as well as on the top. So it's going to give different sounds. And we have thousands of different sounds. And those sounds have different messages. Like back in the day when the Europeans came to Africa for that trade, which is very unfortunate. I'm talking about the slavery. So we have all these black people, Africans who were very trained. They were sitting in the corners of the village, the corner of the city or the country. For your information, Africa was not split yet before June 1885 when Leopold II and all the Europeans, and including Americans, decided to share and split Africa into different countries. We were only one continent country like the USA. So at that time, then, different kings and different corners of Africa, they had some warriors, and those warriors were very well trained how to interpret and how to play those drums. So there are some drums were specifically used to give an alert when there is an invader, there is an enemy coming in a territory. The case of the white men, those colonists, when they were coming in the west coast of Africa, some guys were playing those drums. And then when they were playing the drums, there was a specific message sending out to the chief of the village, the chief of the county, hey, there is something coming in. So through the sound, A typical sound, not like just playing it, but no. Typical sound would send out that message, and everybody would be aware, make them get ready for counterattacking. And also, even in our modern days, we're using drums for certain ceremonies, marriage, the birth, or even funeral, or something like that. Different events. But still, the drums we are using, they're using for a purpose. The second reason why we're using drums is more deep involved in the mystical spiritual initiations. Means the knowledge of what we call the metaphysics, knowledge of what you can call the gods, the knowledge of our ancestors. Because for us Africans, we don't believe that God is a special being who's outside of us. We believe that God is what we call the universal soul, and that universal soul is the ensemble of all the souls of all mankind on earth. When they have reached after different incarnations, hundreds and thousands of incarnations, then they become perfect and they become a part of that living high power within the universe. So the drum is a part of a very important instrument we're using to reach that level of spirituality. Like I said in the beginning of my introduction, even in some hospitals, some folks use it for therapy. That's why we call it art therapy. I was talking to one of my coworker. He works with me in the same place at the same psych hospital, and we talk a little bit about it. And he said, "Listen, I would like to watch your show. If you can pass on this teaching in English, I would really appreciate to learn more about the drums." I hope he's going to watch this, just to keep in mind that the drum is not only therapeutic, which is good, and he even mentioned about the djembe. The djembe is one of the drum used in Western country of Africa, mainly in Senegal and Mali. The djembe, it gives you peace. When you play the djembe, the player, when he's playing that djembe drum, everybody has that kind of peace within them. It's the same thing, the drum you're going to listen here, you're going to feel something. And for us, as a shaman, spiritual shaman from our country with a specific training in what we call Bwiti, B-W-I-T-Y, Bwiti, you can do some research. Bwiti is one of the very old religion, very old African traditional society where you can find the truth about yourself, going back to your past life, find out who you are, and make you a real man. So because you can understand all the principles of life, how life functions, who's God, who the gods and invisible masters, those guardians of the universe, the guardians of the galaxies. So it's through the Bwiti you can understand that. It's a very old religion over 25,000 years. So in the Bwiti and all different initiations or secret rites in our country, we use the drum as a very important messenger. So the guy who's playing the drum, of course, he's very well trained. Whatever sounds you're going to listen, there is a message. And me being a mystical man, I understand. So the djembe, of course, give peace, right? Different drums will give you peace. Even the Westerns. I was talking to this fellow, this friend who works with me in the same place, the same guy I was talking to you earlier. I mentioned that he's an art therapist. He's the one who was telling me about, reminding me, because I know it. He was saying, well, the djembe brings peace. And I can tell because I attended myself while he's doing that with the patients, with the individuals are there, the clients are playing those drums, and they feel like, even when the one who were very violent, the one who was very schizophrenic or confused, they feel that sort of peace invading their interior, invading their inner power. They feel like they're kind of possessed by a certain type of peace and, and the joy. So I'm going to go with you here to enjoy some of my drums from my country, and you will tell me what you feel. I can guarantee you that you will enjoy it. So here we go. as you can hear that. That's a drum. So the guy is using his hands. Those hands, he's using hands. Thank you for listening. I appreciate. You see me going through the motion of the movement and all that, because I understand the whole message. That lady's singing, and you can see that her song goes along with the rhythm of the drum, and the guy who's playing the drum, he goes through different phases. So you couldn't tell that there we had two drums. I can tell by the sounds. Some of our experts, like in my country, they could play up to 5 drums. So what they do, they would put the bigger one on the top, and they would put the little ones in the bottom. So they would put like 3 right there on the left, in the center, and then on the right, 3, right? And then the average one would be on the top of the tree, and the big one would be completely on the top. So he would go from the top, he would go from the bottom Man, if you watch that, it's amazing. So next time I will have the opportunity to make you listen. So for one guy who's playing actually 5 drums with a different rhythm, with different sounds, but believe me, you're gonna feel the same way you feel when you're listening to the djembe, one of the drum made very popular in America and Europe, because these guys, they wanted to inform people. They wanted people to learn the culture about Africa. But don't forget, Africa is over 55 countries, and those different countries with the different cultures, over 26,000 languages and tribes, and it's kind of very confusing. So everybody got a story, everybody got an instrument, but what we have in common, what we share in common, is the drums. So like I told you, to summarize what I just said, to make it very short and understandable, so when you're going to be asked about that question, what's the origin of the drum? The origin was the drum. The origin of the drum is Africa. And what is it? What is it made out of? It made out of trees, typical trees, very chosen, not any kind of tree. And then after that, they cut out this tree, and then they would make a hole in the center, make it hole open from the bottom up. And then the second elements they're going to add on the bottom, the skin of an animal. It's not any kind of animals. I already showed you how they do it. They have to choose specific animals. And those animals, of course, they'll take the skin off, and they're going to dry the skin with the ashes, and there are all different rituals they're going to go through. After that, they're going to let it dry in the sun for a couple of days or weeks, even sometimes a month. And once that skin is really dried and strong, and then they're going to tie it up from the bottom and the top. They're going to use specific cords or ropes. Yes, that's the third element. They got to use a specific ropes, and those ropes are very, very strong. So, and then the way they are tightening, they are tightening the ropes will also, from the tightening of the rope, will depend the sound of the drum. That's very important. So if you make it more tighter, means the sound is going to be more dry, more noisy. But if you make it less tighter, the sound is going to be different. And then if you make it less and less tighter and a bigger drum, so it means that drum is going to make big noise. I mean, they're going to make a big sound, a sound of what we can call the bass. And from the bass, you have the solo, and you have different sounds. So thank you so much for watching this show on my channel, Tata Nzambe, le tout-puissant Akana, which means Tata Nzambe, that's how we call God in our Bantu area, from all the Central Africa on the west and all going down to South Africa. And le tout-puissant means the most high. And Akana is another name of him, like you're saying Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah Jireh, or whatever name attributes. So Akana, Teta Mwangari Banga Banga, those are called different attributes. We give it to the Most High, creator of the universe. Thank you so much, and be blessed. And then I'll see you on the next show. Thank you. Thank you.